All right, so I'm Nicole Balk. I'm with the New York State DEC. A lot of my work lately has been focused on salmon. You may have seen me helping some of the crew on the Boquet River. We do the trap netting in the fall. I'm out there once in a while helping. But most recently, we just finished up our 4th year of an experimental pen rearing project up on the Saranac River. And I'll explain why that might be relevant in a bit. And then I can give you a brief update on Imperial fish ladder. I'm not an expert, so I will refer you to my supervisor with really big questions. And then I have a little bit of a update on this river Creel pilot study that we did on the Saranac and the Boquet River last year. Okay, so we're trying this experimental pen rearing project because we want to try to increase survival of stocked salmon and then possibly return rates and increase the river fishery. So experimentally, we stocked about half of the fish, 26,000 salmon smolts, into these giant net pen cages, and I have pictures on the next slide, don't worry. And then we have a control. The regular stocking just goes directly into the river, another 26,000 smolts. And in year 1, these fish had fin clips, so physical marks where you could look at the fish when you caught it and go, ooh, this was from this group or that group. And then the following years, the last couple of years, we've used the fish from Eisenhower National Fish Hatchery, and those were the genetically marked, the PBT fish. So there's no longer a physical mark, unfortunately, but if you fill out the little envelope and put a little genetic sample, a little tissue, little scales, and send them to us, we'll put them to the lab, and then we'll find out where the fish came from.
Doesn't say anything where to do with it. Put the thing in there, put it, no address.
Lori has, I think, a one-page piece of information that has the address, and it describes how to collect the sample and what to do. It's federal, but we're helping coordinate. If you want to go through me to get more samples, I can certainly give them to you. You can contact either of us for the information sheet, or if you need more or want some for your friends, let us know. Yes, Lori has a mailing system in place. I'm not part of the mailing system, but we see each other at meetings often, so if you ever want to return things to me, I can also just hand deliver them to Lori at a meeting at some point. Okay. No, it's not changing. Oh, it did change. Okay, sorry. So, like I said, we just finished year 4. I think it was last Friday. We stocked and we released the fish from the net pens, and that was also the direct stocking day for the river fish. So far, we've been pretty successful with the net pens in terms of survival. We haven't had any big mortality events. The previous years, it was like 1%, 2%, and this year it was a little bit higher, 2.2%, which I don't think is terrible at all. But we had a new location this year, slightly different mechanics, and we figured it out. So next year, hopefully we'll go back down to that 1.5% or so. So the objective with these net pens, we're not necessarily trying to grow the fish in the pens, just keep them alive, make sure they're happy and healthy. But every year so far, we have found, Kurt has run the numbers for us, they did grow almost an inch in the net pens while they were there for just 3 weeks. So they seem to be pretty happy. I'm going to show you some fun video clips. This is a clip of the salmon in the net pens from a SUNY Plattsburgh student who ran up there Friday morning before his classes and dropped an ROV that he wants to use for his research project to test if it could detect fish. He wants to go and sample potentially bass nests around the Plattsburgh and Northern Bay areas, but he was like, hey, you have fish, can I come look at them? And I was like, of course, I want to see my fish. I have no real good way of seeing them. So he came and took that cool little clip for us. And then here we had a professional photographer, Vince, I forget his last name, but he came up on that Friday as well, so it was a very busy Friday. And he put his GoPro on a stick down there, and you can see most of the fish are kind of hanging out near the bottom, and this is them leaving as we let them go. So they just kind of soft release, swim out into the lake, and then we pull the nets, and we're like, all right, bye, good luck. So, all right, and these are just some still shots. We've got the salmon smolt. We did a salmon assessment about a week before the release just to check on them. That's how we got our lengths and weights. We did it before they were stocked. We did it right before they were released. And the hatchery also does this before the salmon are stocked into the river, so we can kind of compare all their lengths and weights and how they're doing. This is the pen. 20 foot long, of them. The key part with these pens is they're floating. They have the white tubes. It's PVC. It's just a float full of air. They have to have a place that they can be tied or attached. So a lot of people have asked, can we put them on the Boquet River? I haven't come up with a good way to secure them. And with the flashy flows in the river, that has been prohibitive. So we started out on the Saranac River, and I'll talk in a second about the fish ladder and how that might change things a little bit with this project. But we couldn't have done this without many volunteers. Trout Unlimited provided a lot of help. We had students from SUNY Plattsburgh, a couple professors showed up, and just random members from the public came and were interested and helped assemble the pens, take them down, stock the fish, carrying buckets, pouring them in. So very happy with the results so far. And as Lori said, hopefully we'll get some of that genetic data back by December. And that'll be, is it 2 years worth or just one? 2 to 3 years worth of data collected that's running in the lab right now. And then we'll be able to assess whether or not these net pens had an impact. Were the fish able to imprint? Are they going to come back to the river at a higher rate than the regular stocked fish? Kind of want to know. I'm pretty excited, so we're going to find out relatively soon. It's been years of waiting, so we should have some answers this winter. And hopefully we'll be able to talk about that probably at the State of the Lake, or maybe we'll have a special meeting and talk all about it. Lori already went over all the genetic tagging, but yeah, we're looking at the pen-reared fish versus direct stock fish, fry and smolt comparisons, and also looking at some straying rates. If we stock the fish in the Saranac, do they come back to the Saranac? How many of them go to the Boquet? How many go to Winooski? We'll be able to tell like all of that and a bunch of other stuff like Lori described just from using this genetic tag and getting those samples back from the anglers. And we'll take samples when we're in the field as well. But anything you guys can contribute, be really helpful. Okay. So Imperial Dam, I have a brief update. Dave did a very good job covering this a little bit earlier, but here we go. So basically, we've developed a package that has to go out for bid to get construction bids for building this fish ladder. That's going out now-ish. They're supposed to start construction this fall. And it'll probably take about 2 years to be fully complete and ready to have a fish swim up this fish ladder. They're doing mussel salvage work, hopefully this summer. We had a few delays, as Dave mentioned, this winter. We pushed back the start date. We wanted to make sure we had the best model or the best design we possibly could to get the best passage. So we hired on some more engineers and had them go through and do these crazy models. We bought a supercomputer basically to help run these models, sent it through a bunch of different simulations. And I've got a few pictures from those simulations. I'll try to explain them, but I'm not an engineer. But we went through a lot of effort to try to do as good of a job as we can. All right, so over on the left, that's roughly what the fish ladder is going to look like. And if you remember, Dave showed you the picture of the dam. On the right side, there's this like old defunct structure. On the left side would be the Imperial Mills. So this would sit on the right side of the dam. That's the DEC-owned kind of property area. And that's roughly what it would look like. So the fish would come in here, meander around through these different cells, and go up. And then up here somewhere, there's going to be a fish trap. So we'll be able to catch those fish, measure them, weigh them, and then let them continue on their way. It varies a little bit. It's not so much steps, it's more of like a gradual slope, I want to say, as it goes through. And part of the analysis we were doing with the hydro, the flows and stuff, they did these little designs on the bottom here. So red is like higher flows, blue is a slower flow. I've got another picture that shows it a little bit better, but this is just one version of what it might look like. And they looked at each cell. So between each of these little green barriers is like a cell. And they hyper-analyze every cell, trying to figure out, make sure the flow was going the right way. The fish weren't going to get confused, turn around, and head out. Here's another image of that with like the red being high flow. So it's the water's flowing from the bottom left over here and then this direction. But if there were any cells that didn't have this high flow, the red flow, they went in and tweaked some things. They can install little gates or adjust the heights and try to improve those flows so the fish won't be confused, so they know where to go and they're going to follow that flow. And this was a crazy drawing they came up with, but again, this is can I move this? Hope I didn't break it. Okay, so again, Imperial Mills over here, dam face, defunct structure. This is going to be the fish ladder over here. The entrance is right there. So this is just the water flowing over. I think the white represents the bedrock that's currently there. So right now the fish, if they come over the dam, they just mostly might hit the bedrock, which is not great. So we want them to come up here. We want a nice flow. We want more of this like red color here. And this is not the best drawing. There's multiple versions of this because they were able to change the flows. They added a deflector in some cases. There's a sidewinder gate that they can control, and they can raise and lower that gate. And that all affects the flow through the ladder and at the entrance. And so the deflector was down here. So they found if they added a little bit of a structure here, like a little wall, it actually improved the flow into the entrance, which is what we want. So fish are attracted to flow. So in other versions of this, there was actually an orangish red line here showing that the fish could follow that into the ladder. So that was the purpose of doing all these different modeling designs, was just to try to figure out what can we do to make it attractive to the fish. So ideally, we're going to pick the best version with whatever configuration they decide we need for the sidewinder, and they have some guidelines based on different flows. They ran it at low flows, high low flows, medium flows, and tweaked all those things. So they're going to give us like a breakdown of what is most effective, and we can go in during the season and change the heights of those gates. We can modify certain parts of the ladder to make sure it's as effective as it can be. I'm not going to do that. That's going to be loud. Okay. So also last year we had a river creel pilot study in preparation for the real deal, which will happen this fall. But we were testing out locations and trying to find where the anglers are most often, what time of day maybe we should be targeting, that sort of thing. So we did the Saranac and Boquet River. So Boquet River, we focused on the area just below the Cascades here in Willsboro. We had people, our staff went to the different parking areas. If they saw people there, they went and interviewed them. If they found people at the fishing pool, they'd walk down and try to talk to them there as well, or wait till they come out. We went down to the Gilliland Park boat launch, looked around, just anywhere anglers could access. We were wandering around for a couple hours trying to figure out what they were catching, what they were fishing for. Were they successful? Were they happy? Did a little bit of a survey. Saranac River, we tried a couple spots. Green Street down by the mouth is always popular. We tentatively tried a couple places. There's like a little park here where there's supposedly fishing access. We never saw a human being there, so we stopped going there. And Imperial Dam at the fishing pool, there was quite a few anglers there. So we'll keep those two spots. So the last survey in the Boquet River was in 2016. I think Lori has that data. Her techs did that back in the day. Saranac River, the last survey was 1997. So we're a bit overdue to figure out what's going on there. So that'll help us with our salmon information. So in the spring, so we did a spring and a fall survey, just to try to see it, because we've heard there's spring runs. We wanted to see if that was really true. Spring, we got 10 interviews on the Boquet River, 27 on the Saranac River. Not a whole lot of anglers, but we also weren't out there every day. It was a very abbreviated survey, just to get an idea whether there was a fishery there. Catch rates were not great, as you all know, and have all reported to me. Made a mistake there. Moved that to the next slide, sorry. Okay, so then we went out in the fall. Similar numbers, 12 interviews on the Boquet, a few more, 43 on the Saranac River. Average trip length, a little longer on the Boquet. People stayed 4.5 hours. Saranac River, about 3 hours. Catch rate was a bit higher on the Saranac River in the fall, 0.3 fish per hour. I think that's pretty good, I think, as a general statewide catch rate. Boquet River was a bit lower, and I did get a lot of verbal reports that the fishing was not great last fall. So that kind of makes sense. Boquet River anglers seem to be slightly more satisfied with their fishing on the day of the interview than the Saranac anglers, but pretty similar otherwise. We asked people a lot of different questions, and we asked like what state you're from and that sort of thing. And most of the anglers on both rivers, like 70% or more, were local fishermen. It's you guys. You're out there fishing. It's not people from New Jersey or Connecticut or whatever. There's a few, but that's why we wanted to come talk to you and get your information because you're out there fishing. Anyway.
So any sense on why they're catching less fish, but they're happier?
That's a very good question. Very good question. Yeah, so actually, I don't even think I've even said how many fish yet. That might be in the next slide. Ooh.
Actually, they were twice as happy. Right?
Okay. Sorry?
They're twice as happy.
They're twice as happy. I don't know if it was that much. A little bit different. Okay. Let's see. Where was I? I think I had a slide with some numbers here. Is that the one? It's very small. Oh, and we also asked, one of the things was, do you release your salmon? How often do you release your salmon? So we compared them for the Boquet and Saranac. We said, do you release them all the time? Saranac anglers, most of the time. Boquet, 40% of the time. Do you release them most of the time? Boquet anglers mostly do. Some of the time, or never. Some of the Saranac anglers actually harvest their salmon. So that was kind of interesting. And then, did I put it on there? Well, I neglected to put it. I put it in my notes, that's why. Okay. So the Boquet River in the fall, they only caught 2 salmon. 2 salmon were reported caught. It's not very many. So it's a very small sample size, so I wouldn't take too many judgments based on that. In the Saranac River, they caught 6. But we're going to go back out this fall, starting in September 1st, and we're going to do a full-on survey. We're going to have technicians out there 3-4 days a week. I'm not sure how long, how many hours every day, but probably a minimum of 4 hours, and covering all periods of the fishing day. We'll try to focus in on wherever the pilot survey directs us, more morning or more afternoon, but we're going to try to get more data, better data, figure out what's going on with the salmon, get a good idea of like if we can get a catch rate maybe, and compare that with like the angler diary study, see if it matches up. Are people saying the same thing? So anyway, I think that's it. I have one more point. I wrote it down, it wasn't on my slide. With the net pens and how it relates to maybe to the Boquet, once the Imperial fish ladder gets established, we have an idea in the works to put in permanent round tanks at the fish ladder on land, and we would stock the smolts that we're currently putting into the pens, we would stock them into those round tanks instead, and then release them into the river right there. So then they would spend a little bit more time in the river, maybe imprint a little better. But that's one idea. And then thinking further down the road, possibly we could use something like round tanks on the Boquet River, because we can't anchor a net pen somewhere, but maybe we could put a round tank somewhere on land and then do a similar type of study. But that would require a location and land. So to be discussed. Okay, now I'm done. Any questions? Anybody? Yeah.
So, I'm glad you mentioned that about where you release the smolts once the fish ladder's structured. But I'm curious, currently, are they stocked in the lake or are they stocked up in the rivers? And is that important for them to get acclimated to a certain location to return to it?
The net pen fish, currently they're stocked just south of the mouth of the Saranac River. We had to pick one of the marinas. We were at the Plattsburgh Marina for the first few years, and then we just transitioned this year to the next marina down. It's a couple 100-yard difference. It's another marina, Plattsburgh Basin and Oasis Marina. It's as close as we could get to the river itself, because there wasn't a good spot to there's no docks like in the Saranac River that where we could attach these giant pens. So we got as close as we could, and the idea is that hopefully that's close enough to get the Saranac River water, the signature of that water, and the pens will imprint to that and then come back to the Saranac River. So if they're swimming around the lake looking for their spawning river, they're going to swim by the Boquet and be like, nope, not quite, and keep going, and then look close to the Saranac and be like, hey, I think we found it. And they just need to make it a couple hundred yards to go around the bend into the river, and we're counting on that happening. Hopefully that's what happens. We don't have any guarantees. It's an experiment.
And currently, where are they stocked? If they weren't in the pens?
They would be direct stocked into the river. We were doing it just at the Plattsburgh boat launch, I think, for the last few years. Before that, it was on Green Street. There was like a little dirt boat launch, but like a tenth of a mile from the mouth. I think this year they actually went and put some of them a little bit further upstream. There was one site, I think, near the police station, just to try to give them a little bit more time in the river. Boquet, I think they're stocked near Wadhams.
Yep.
Up near Wadhams. The smolts are stocked near Wadhams, yeah.
And I'll just add too, if I could, Nicole, one thing that we're looking to is, you mentioned imprinting and stocking in the river, and that's definitely something to consider, and there's trade-offs, right? So fry stocking would give you the most amount of time in river for imprinting, and then smolt stocking leads to higher survival. And so one of the things that we'll be looking at is fry versus smolt stocking. Are we getting better returns from one of those stocking efforts? Because fry are also stocked in the Saranac and the Boquet, and also the Au Sable. So we'll have the ability to assess that as well.